Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
I usually start the show, introduce my guest, and then bring them on. But you know, it's Friday, and
I'm just here.
And Dr. Elizabeth Yurth is here with us today to talk about stem cells, and we're going to talk about stem cells and from a study that looked at osteoarthritis of the knee. But a lot of the things we're going to talk about can probably be takeaways to stem cell therapy in general. And Dr. Yurth has raised some interesting questions. You know, very popular today for your physician to say, "Oh, and we're going to take the stem cells from you," and you go, "Oh God, that makes me so relieved because I don't have to worry about where they're coming from or what that means to me, both ethically and health wise. You're extracting them from me. You're using my own stem cells. This is wonderful, but is it?" And we're going to talk about why. And then we'll also talk about, since this is a pep talk, peptide therapies that go hand in hand with this discussion. I just have to thank my title sponsor first, which is Legendary Foods, makers of the tasty pastry, the Pop-Tart Reimagined. These taste delicious like cake. Your kids will eat them without being forced. That's how good they taste. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary, and use the code SHR10. You can order them, and I promise you, once you order them, you will never want to be without them again. So show them some love. And we haven't seen Dr. Betsy Yurth in a while. I haven't had you on the show for a while because
why is that, Carl?
Well, no, because I'm going to tell you why. I learned this from Howard Stern. You know, I used to do security for Howard Stern. Whenever they had Who Wants to Marry a Porn Star, I would do all the background searches. So I worked with Gary Dell'Abate very closely. A true story. This is 2006, 2007. And I learned from Howard that you have these rising stars and they become popular and they're everywhere. And that's when you have to not have them on again until the fickle crowd forgets about them, and then you have them back on.
Got it.
You were everywhere. You did Dave Asprey. You didn't need my help anymore. So there you go. That's
well. Thank you for having me back on.
You know,
I'll tout that you have fed my addiction to legendary food Pop-Tarts, which, you know, literally we were buying them for the office for a while, but like they would be gone in a day. So
yeah, they're hard not to eat. So let's talk about this. This is not a new study, but it's worthy of talking about because we have so many mainstream people talking about stem cell today. Talk about the original study for a second.
Well, so this study that just came out is new. It came out June 3rd, so it is a month old. But the information about stem cells, our own stem cells, what we call autologous stem cells, is not new. Well, I'll say not new. I mean, we've had data mounting since about 2017. I think an article came out of China in 2017 showing that when you looked at mesenchymal stem cells taken out of bone marrow or fat tissue, or you can take them out of dental pulp, of older people or people with disease processes, that those stem cells had a lot of damage to them. And so that information started kind of mounting in like 2017. This study that just came out, however, was pretty compelling in that, you know, we've gotten better and better at looking for these things. And so what they did is they took, you know, stem cells from older mice and they stained them for something called beta-galactosidase. And that is a marker for damaged, what we call senescent cells. I know you've talked about cell senescence on I've listened to a couple of your podcasts you've done with some experts.
Yeah, Dr. Blagascloni was the first one to come on to talk about them.
Yeah, Blagascloni with his rapamycin. And so we know that cell senescence is a problem. We know it's one of the causes of aging, that we get these older cells, and old cells are supposed to die. They just kill themselves off, apoptosis. If they don't, they end up in kind of this cell cycle arrest where they just sit there. And we call them zombie cells because they not only just sit there, but they start making these abnormal proteins, what we call SASPs, or senescent associated secretory phenotype proteins. And those actually start spewing out of that cell and they can damage the cells around them. And we know that this is a leading cause of a lot of different diseases, aging of our skin, heart, cancers, things like that. We kind of never equated it to arthritis. For some reason, why is every other disease of aging sort of associated with this, but never really people thought about it with arthritis. And then we started looking at arthritis and we saw that, wow, chondrocytes, the same thing happens. You start getting these senescent chondrocytes and they start damaging the cells around them. And one of the interesting things is that can happen actually very rapidly. So even if you're a younger person and you suffer an injury, then you'll damage some of the chondrocytes, and some of those chondrocytes can go into this suspended animation state. So that may be why we see post-traumatic arthritis even in young people, is that these damaged chondrocytes start spewing out these proteins, they damage the cells around them. But as we get older, and especially if you already have arthritis, we know that there may be a root evil even at your stem cell level. And so what this study showed is that's indeed true. And when you looked at people who have arthritis, they have a very high number of senescent stem cells.
Well, I actually connected a dot that was waiting to be connected since 2006. I did a show in 2006 that identified a glucose signaling is what triggers cellular senescence. And this is before we even knew that cellular senescence
was a thing, right?
Was a thing, yeah. I think it was I want to say it was a Rutgers University scientist. It's been so long, I can't remember them all. But so I always attributed, obesity, diabetes, type 2 diabetes is really what's causing cellular senescence. But we also know that years ago we thought obese people got arthritis because of physical loading of the joint.
Right.
True, because obese people get arthritis in their fingers and in their neck. And it's like, it's not just their knees and their hips. And so then we realized, well, it's inflammation. There's some sort of inflammatory. But now what I just connected was obesity, type 2 diabetes, glucose signaling, and the cellular senescence of chondrocytes.
I mean, yeah, you're exactly right. That and there may be genetic influences playing a role there too, right? That maybe led to both things a bit, but you're exactly right that we've for years and the orthopedists. I mean, for listeners who don't know me, my background is orthopedics, and they still tell people that all the time. Oh, well, you're just too fat. You're loading your joints too much, and you're wearing out. Or my yoga instructor is just needed a hip replacement, and her doctor told her, oh, it's just a life well lived. You just used your joint up too much. And I'm like,
I know so many people now that have never been obese in their entire lives who are relatively lean. One of them is, in fact, a yoga instructor. She's had double hip replacement.
Yeah.
And she's a little itty bitty thing.
Right. Yeah. And so we know probably, Ruth, there's genetic influences here that play a role. And we know that injuries compound that, because every time you get injured, you create this inflammatory response. But if your body can't shut off that inflammatory response, you start that cascade, right? And that goes down to a stem cell level. So we have to start thinking about, first paramount is we have to start thinking about arthritis differently than your orthopedic doctor tells you. It is not a wear and tear disease. Going and taking out cartilage that's damaged is not going to fix the problem for arthritis. In fact, it's going to worsen it. So unless we start changing that paradigm, we're never going to make headway. So I love that people are looking at other options,
Right.
and myself, I do tons of regenerative therapies on my patients, but, and so for years we thought, okay, now we've got the answer. So now we take people's stem cells, we put it back in, and we can regenerate tissue. Just like, instead of having to have your joint replaced, we can actually regenerate unless you're too far down the road. And then it's not working quite so well, right? We're like, well, sometimes it works, but
so really, and let's get right to this, because this is fascinating. So when you are extracting stem cells, let's say to be injected into the capsule of the knee, Where
right?
do you get those from? You get them from fat cells? You get them from where do you get them from?
The two places that are probably the most accessible for most of us is either bone marrow aspirate. So you put a needle into the pelvis. There's a great little spot in the pelvis you can just go to, and you aspirate out bone marrow cells out of there, or you can take them out of fat cells. And those are both very good sources. In orthopedics, we tend to use bone marrow aspirates a little bit more. A lot of times in cosmetics, they tend to use fat a little bit more. But they're both very good sources of stem cells. There's a lot of sources of stem cells. I mean, dentists, you can actually, dental pulp has tons of stem cells. An article just came out last week about urine containing a lot of stem cells. So maybe that'll be a great source. That'll be a really nice, easy source. But for now, that's where we've been getting them from.
Now, these are undifferentiated stem cells, right? They're just, they can become
naive stem cells. So mesenchymal stem cells, they're naive stem cells, so they can become other tissue, right?
But stem cells could be senescent already when you're extracting them, you're saying.
In fact, if you're older, they are. So now there's at least 13 studies that have looked at that if you look at an older person's stem cells, by older, we're probably talking about getting 40 and on, that there was escalating staining for senescent cells. So remember, senescent cells are suspended animation zombie cells. They kill the cells around them, right? So now if I'm taking these stem cells out and I'm like, great, this is great, I put them back into the joint, they're going to become nice new cartilage. And what they're really doing is there's those senescent cells are spewing out these bad things, and they've isolated. They're spewing out like a lot of inflammatory cytokines, interleukin 6, interleukin 8. They're actually suppressing some of the good cytokines. So we actually now have put all these things in, and when they looked staining, those senescent cells, the chondrocytes around them turned into senescent cells. That's why we like to call them zombie cells, right? Mm-hmm. Now those zombie cells create more. So now you've actually escalated the arthritis. Why do people maybe get better short term? Because you do get this kind of inflammatory response. It maybe starts initiating healing, but then they may be progressing, and we may be actually making them worse with time.
And let's expand on that for a second. So there are phenomenons that are hormetic, that just the intrusion of a needle, for instance, forces the body to pay attention to that tissue and turn on healing values. It's actually a therapy called prolotherapy. We just did a show about prolotherapy, helping to regenerate an atrophied quadricep muscle in a bodybuilder.
Right.
And so we know that, if they're going into that capsule joint and they're injecting these stem cells, the sheer disruption of the process could actually stimulate some temporary short-term healing. Now, if you're going to depend on prolotherapy, you got to do it again and again and again and again to get it to go full cycle to complete healing. But if they're just going in and they're putting some stem cells in your knee, the following weeks you may go, oh my God, I can't believe it. My knees don't hurt. This is wonderful. And you may immediately think the stem cells are working.
Right. And you're right. And it's a little bit like the sham when they went in there with people with meniscal tears in their knees, and they did a real surgery where they trimmed out the meniscal tear, and then they did a sham surgery where they just stuck the scope in the knee and did nothing. They did equally as well temporarily. And then actually the sham surgery people fared better than the real surgery people. But we know that just probably doing something creates a little bit of a reaction that our body is trying to respond to, temporarily. But the key is, are we actually doing anything long term? And we've linked a lot of arthritis and degenerative disc disease. The same thing's true about discs. There's the same disease, degenerative disease, arthritis, kind of the same disease, and they're linked to high levels of something called interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6, something called matrix protease. Those are what are most upregulated by these senescent cells, and those are what we've linked to these really bad degenerative joint diseases. Mm-hmm. So what are we actually doing here? And this article really made me rethink. We learn with time, unfortunately, some of the things we've done. And we've always been aware of cell senescence and treating cell senescence. So we always take our patients before we do any regenerative therapies and we optimize them, right? We put them on things that will hopefully help cell senescence. So we've always, we put our patients on penisin polysulfate to reduce interleukin 1 beta. and MMP3. So we use that. We'll use rapamycin for a period of time, or even metformin, which is a great senolytic, right? You can use for a period of time before you do these procedures, in hopes that now we've actually negated this cell senescence piece. But I doubt, unless you've been doing this for years, that you've actually targeted these stem cells in our, weeks before. So, if for 6 weeks I put somebody on this whole protocol I put them on, have I really changed their stem cell population?
Have
Probably
you been
not.
able to determine that? That would be an easy thing to do. Couldn't you extract stem cells, put them on this protocol, extract stem cells, and then stain to see?
Yeah, you'd have to have a lab where you could stain for beta-galactosidase. I don't really have that, but certainly they could do that, and it would be an interesting study. It would be a great study to do. Maybe we should work with some people to do that, because it would be very interesting. Are we actually can you see a change in the number of senescent stem cells if we put people on these protocols? So like people like you and I, who are kind of doing these protocols all the time, maybe we would fare better, right, than somebody who just comes in. But if you look at the typical person with arthritis walking into their orthopedist office and getting these procedures, they're not living the way we do, right? They're not taking rapamycin and doing fasting and doing all these things.
They're not time restricted feeding. They're not
Right.
making sure they don't eat 3 hours before bed. They're not getting in bed at 9 o'clock. They're not getting up first thing in the morning and training. And it's the productive lifestyle
Right.
that will influence
And
that.
in fact, most of them have stopped exercising completely, right? Because their doctor told them, if you keep exercising that knee, it's going to get worse, which is quite frankly complete bullshit.
Right.
You cannot, once you stop exercising your knee, now what happens? You've actually markedly increased the inflammatory cytokines in the joint. One of the cool things about exercise is it does raise inflammatory cytokines. Like you'll see an increase in TNF alpha, which is tumor necrosis factor alpha is a very inflammatory cytokine, but it pushes it into the muscle. So it actually takes it out of the serum where it's doing bad things to us, to our brain and our heart and our joints. And it pushes it into the muscle because that's where the muscle needs the inflammation to grow, right? So it takes these bad cytokines out of the serum, puts them into the muscle temporarily. So that's one of the reasons once you stop exercising, you start seeing an increase in these inflammatory cytokines in the serum, in the joint. And the first thing I hear all my patients, the doctor told me to stop doing that.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. They told me not to exercise when I was getting ready for a pacemaker.
Yeah.
They told me, you cannot exercise anymore because we got to put a pacemaker in you. let me ask you a dumb question. Do you think that the compartmentalization of stem cells in bone is somehow more protected than in soft tissue?
I don't think so. I think that probably it's going to be similar.
Okay.
I think that probably that stem cell population, if you stain, you're going to have the same thing in the fat tissue in this, than you are. I think we're seeing that, we've compartmentalized all these diseases, right? Heart disease is one thing, and brain disease is one thing, and joint disease is one thing. But in reality, they're all the same.
Come from the same thing. Yeah, they all come from the same thing. Yeah.
Right,
So the reason I ask you this is, before I pose this question, azithromycin has been approved by the FDA as a senolytic.
Right.
A single 5-day, where you start out with 1,000 milligrams day one and then 5, is supposed to remove close to 90% of senescent cells from the body in just 5 days. Why not do 2 bouts of that and then go fishing for stem cells?
Yeah, I think that, and again, I think that's reasonable. Is it systemically getting rid of some of our senescent cells and not at the stem cell level? I don't know the answer to that, right? So are we really addressing the stem cell population with 2 short courses of a senolytic agent or not? My guess is it might take a more ongoing approach to actually have really changed our stem cell population over time. Remember, that's been accumulating for years and years and years, right? The stem cell population is, and so I think you can definitely change systemic inflammatory when you look at inflammatory markers. And, like if I just pull blood out and I stain my cells for beta-galactosidase, I think you can definitely see change. The studies have shown that with azithromycin, with rapamycin, and that's why probably all of us should be doing those things ongoing and probably starting at a very young age, quite frankly. You and I got started on that pretty late, right? We're in our 60s is, well, it would have been nice had we known this at 25. The rapamycin studies they've recently come out show that the earlier you started it, at least in mouse models, the better off they did.
I have a friend. He was an Army Ranger. He owned the powerhouse gym I used to train at years ago. His name is Jeff, and he underwent a kidney transplant, and so he takes sirolimus at a fairly high dose daily for anti-rejection. He is aging friggin' amazingly. He has no gray hair. He just, and I keep telling him, I say it's the sirolimus, and he doesn't, he's whatever. But the guy is he looks amazing because of that stuff. He's been taking it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're catching on, so certainly at a low dose. I think we don't really have a great sense what the right dose is yet. But the whole key is, are we going to be able to do that? I mean, I that would be where I would say probably if you'd have to start planning very early these senolytic approaches, maybe a year, to really start making enough changes. So that's where it comes in. It comes to number one, start thinking about joint disease like every other disease. So if you have arthritis and you're 25 years old, then you should be starting to do these things then, because you're going to halt the progression of the arthritis by getting rid of senescent cells. So if you start getting rid of senescent cells when your arthritis starts, then you're going to end up a whole lot better at 60. I mean, you and I both beat ourselves up young. I mean, I tore my ACLs when I was in my 20s, right? And, it was a downhill course since then for my knees. What if you started at that stage doing these things? And that's one of our approaches, because you start this, so when you look at this post-traumatic arthritis, so senescent cells are induced by a couple of things. Number one, age. So senescent cells accumulate simply with age, right? So you have to do things, even if you live perfectly, you will still accumulate senescent cells. So that's why we're trying to find things to get rid of them. But so will trauma. So once you've damaged some of the pathways, inflammatory traumatic events, now you create oxidative stress that can create some senescent cells.
Interesting.
So even we think that these young people who you tear your ACL at 20, you've got an 80% chance you're going to have severe arthritis by 50, even if you repair it. Why is that? Well, probably some of that damage, the oxidative damage to the cells with the time of the injury and then the surgery,
it seeds it. It starts to seed it.
Now you've got these senescent cells, and they start damaging the cells around. So we're actually trying to encourage, all of our young athletes who hurt themselves, whether they have to have surgery or not, that we actually do some of these senolytic approaches at the time of injury as well, to kind of prevent that kind of cascade, But I think from your approach of when is enough senolytic, and that's what your approach of using the azithromycin is what we've been doing. We have people come in 6 weeks before the procedure. We put them on all this very aggressive senolytic protocol. I don't know, are my outcomes maybe better than before I did that? Yes. But are there people who still don't get better? Yes. So I think maybe we're still not addressing the whole problem. And that's where I think the direction this needs to go a little bit more is either not using your own stem cells, right? Which is more difficult here in the US. So, you can go to other countries and you can get, if you go to Ukraine, you can get, go to M-cell and get embryonic stem cells. You can go to Panama or Mexico and get umbilical stem cells, because those don't have damage. They don't have the accumulated damage, right?
Yeah.
Harder.
Now, I want to take a break and promote something. And when we come back, I want to talk about when stem cells are injected. Are they injected in a medium like hyaluronic acid or PRP or anything like that?
So typically not. So typically when you use stem cells, you're just directly injecting the stem cells. You filter them out and put them in. Okay.
I have some questions. We're going to take a break, but we always hear people saying you have to be your own advocate when it comes to medicine. Can't just let doctors tell you what to do. You have to have an opinion, but it's very hard to have an opinion if your first discussion about your disease is at your doctor's diagnosis. And that's why Dr. Yurth assembled the Human Optimization Academy, which is at www.bli.academy, where you can actually learn at a very fast pace a lot of the things that your doctor may or may not know about your particular disorder. This is how you become your own advocate. You can't become your own advocate just by Googling, because there's so much misinformation out there today. But if you do have a disorder, maybe you have an autoimmune disorder or something like that, and you feel like you get the runaround at your doctor all the time, it's time for you to step up and invest a little effort to become your own advocate. And this is where it starts. It starts at the Human Optimization Academy. Again, www.bli.academy. You sign up there. You have classes, right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, we have courses. We actually have an orthopedic course to understand, joints and arthritis a little bit more, to understand what it is. So you can, I will tell you, no orthopedists, except some very progressive ones, understand arthritis as a disease process. They just don't. So we give you we teach you about that. We give you the evidence. Everything is based off scientific literature, peer-reviewed scientific literature. We're not just, saying, oh, this
and the most recent.
And the most recent, exactly.
We talk about on the show, your doctor won't even have in his or her repertoire for another 5 to 10 years.
At least.
So you're missing out on the cutting edge of science by going to a doctor who says, oh, it's got to replace the knee. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, I know you have to take a break, but that's so important. You guys, it takes 17 years for something to get out of the research realm into the clinical realm. 17 years. By then it's actually outdated, so you've got to be able to push the edge a little bit, because there's really cool stuff out there. And, and if you know about it and you know how to get it, it's amazing. But you've got to be able to bridge that gap between research and clinical, because by the time it gets to your clinical realm, most of it's old. Most of it actually is now there's something better.
Yeah, and if you also want to be the smartest kid on your block, go to bli.academy and sign up for the Human Optimization Academy. When we come back, we have lots more questions. We're talking with Dr. Elizabeth Yurth. How did I do that? And because I want to say, and she is with...
Because I'm worth a lot.
Well, yeah, older longevity. If you need a doctor, you can't look in your own city. You have to look throughout the country, because getting the right doctor is the difference between finding answers or having a miserable end to your life. And that's
guys, I'm licensed now in almost every state. It's a headache, but we've gotten licenses almost every state, because we do have people in every state and actually out of the country as well, to kind of come to us. And lots of times it's just for this advice. It's, it's saying, what can I do? And we can just give you some piece of information.
Reach out to you just for a consultation.
Yeah, exactly.
Older longevity. We'll give that website when we come back. I'll put it up. All right, sit tight. We'll be right back with more of Dr. Elizabeth Yurth. Stay tuned. Hey, you've heard me talk about Masszymes from Bioptimizers for years now. It's a safe and natural digestive enzyme supplement that's for men or women that specifically helps you digest the protein in your diet. I never have a meal without at least 3 Masszyme capsules, and that's because I want every bit of amino acids from the protein I eat day in and day out to help this 64-year-old body continue to build new muscle and strength. Well, I can tell you how you can get a free bottle of Masszymes plus 3 free ebooks as a bonus, total gift worth over $81. You'll not only receive a free bottle of the best digestive enzyme for turning all the protein you eat into muscle-building amino acids, but you'll also receive the book From Sick to Superhuman, Plant-Based Superfood Delights, and the Ultimate Carnivore Cookbook, absolutely free with your free bottle of Masszymes. Take advantage of this opportunity fast, because it won't last long. Go to shrnetwork.biz/freemassme, that's FREEMASSME, and see why I will never stop taking Masszymes. There have been no new innovations in men's underwear for hundreds of years. That's all about to change with Sheath. Sheath creates 2 separate compartments for your man stuff, so it doesn't get smashed into a mound and sweaty and stinky. I won't wear any other underwear now that I've learned about Sheath, and you won't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Sheath underwear. That's SHEATHUNDERWEAR. Use code SUPERHUMAN to save 20% off. I promise you, Once you try a pair of sheath underwear, you will never wear anything else. The Hercules pre-workout from Lost Empire Herbs is like no pre-workout you have ever had before. Completely natural formula designed specifically to optimize workouts, provide quicker recovery time, provide adequate nutrition, and get you away from all those no-good, overstimulating pre-workout supplements on the market today. The Hercules pre-workout blend is a mix of extracted natural herbs and mineral pitch. No fake colors, no added flavors, nothing else. Not only will Hercules pre-workout formula help your workouts, but you'll likely discover lots and lots of side effects, beneficial side effects. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Lost Empire today to learn more. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. Are you suffering from signs of an unhappy gut? Diversity is the key to healthy, robust inner ecosystem. Body Ecology probiotic liquids are made by fermenting organic seeds, biodynamic brown rice, and chickpeas together to create a diverse culture found nowhere else on Earth. It's the secret to restoring your gut's microbiome for a healthier digestive tract, improved immune function, and longevity. Take 20% off by visiting the website shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. That's BODYECO. And using the code SHR20.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
I have to take a moment and plug a sponsor real quick because we don't have his banner ad up yet on the website, but it's called Botanic Tonics. I take a third of this as a pre-workout, puts me in the zone. It's a variety of plant-based medicines mixed together with a little bit of pineapple juice. The pineapple juice acts as an enzyme to actually make the kava portion of it work better. If I take a third of it, I train like a freak. If I take half of it, I get a buzz. It replaces alcohol, makes you socially lubricated and feel good. They appropriately call the product Feel Free because it really does make you feel that way. You've got to try it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feel free. Use the code SHR40 for 40% off. I promise you, if you buy it and you don't like it, I will buy it from you because I love this stuff. Okay. So, Dr. Yurth, when we are preparing to inject the stem cells into, let's say, the capsule of the knee, are they spun for any reason to isolate them out?
Yeah, so there's a whole process when you're taking, whether you're taking them from fat or you're taking them from bone marrow. It's a little bit of a different process to kind of extract the stem cells out of the marrow. Sort of a filtering process to extract the stem cells and then spin them down. So you can, isolate really good stem cells. A lot of good systems out there to do that. So I think the issue is not so much getting good quality stem cells or getting a good volume of stem cells.
Getting the bad cells out, getting the zombie cells. So
that's one of the things people are kind of looking at. Is there a way to maybe filter these out? Are they, is the size difference? Are these zombie cells bigger so we can maybe filter them out? So maybe we'll get there. I think probably the approach is going to be what, like the study that came out, a month ago, was what basically used a chemotherapeutic agent that blocked a protein called BCL2. And BCL2 is a protein that basically stops apoptosis of cells. So basically, if you get rid of it, you get cell death of these senescent cells. So what they found is that when they treated the stem cells with this BCL2 inhibitor, so something that inhibited this protein that was blocking these zombie cells from killing themselves, that the zombie cells killed themselves off, and then you stained for beta-galactosidase, the marker for senescent cells, that you saw it was a much better quality of stem cells. You got good, healthy stem cells.
But how do you use a molecular sieve to get them out? Do they change in weight where spinning would have an effect? I guess I understand that using drugs like that, rapamycin, maybe even dasatinib, they don't have to be metabolized to work. So you put them right in the solution,
into this, or into the joint. Yeah.
But once you've got the good stem cells and the dead zombie stem cells, is it okay to shoot the dead ones back in?
Yeah, I don't think the dead ones are gonna. They're not. I mean, you have dead cells all the time. They're not going to do anything bad, right? It's these senescent proteins, these SASPs that are creating the damage, that are producing.
And they're not making that anymore because they're dead.
Yeah. Right. So they're not producing those anymore, right? So those kind of spewing out, right, that are causing the problem. So I think, and maybe it's pre-treating the joint, maybe you just inject into the joint with rapamycin or metformin or, things like that. There's some really good mouse. Some of the stuff, Carl, you've probably seen this, where you can look back to data for like 10 years and you see these things that they were trying. You're like, where did that go? Because it looked really good.
Yeah, right.
They looked at injecting metformin intraarticularly quite some time ago. Metformin has its goods and its bads systemically. Like, we loved it as an anti-aging drug for a while, and then we found out it probably inhibited muscle growth, and so a lot of people stopped taking it. And so but
that's why I never got on the metformin
bandwagon. Yeah,
I'm too much in love with building muscle.
Building muscle, right? So but if you inject it locally, it caused, at least in mice, it stopped the cell senescence inside the because you've got senescent chondrocytes. Even if I didn't take the stem cells, the bad stem cells, and put you in there, one of the things that's causing the progression of the arthritis is that you have senescent chondrocytes that are doing the same thing already. So what they found is by injecting metformin into the joint, that they basically killed off the senescent cells, and mouse's arthritis improved.
Mises. I need Mises to pieces. Do you think so? Educate me about the synovial capsule for a second. Does stuff pass in and out of it over time? So if you inject something into it to pre-treat the joint, does it stay there forever? Does it dissolve? No,
it's going to be metal. It's still going to get absorbed by your bloodstream, right? You've got blood flow around the joint, so it's still going to get absorbed by the bloodstream and not stay there for forever. So probably would have to do this kind of, a little bit repeatedly over time. But if we could get sort of like what you do with yourself, right? Just like taking rapamycin systemically, we don't do it every day, right? We do it once a week or one week a month or whatever your protocol is. So you get rid of all the senescence, and it's going to build back up, and then you get rid of it, and it's going to build back up. So if we can if you're prone to arthritis, and I'll tell you, there's a big genetic piece, and you probably have seen this, right? If you have a parent who had really bad backs or really bad knees, lots of times you do. So there's definitely a genetic piece to arthritis as well, a propensity to have higher levels, for instance, of interleukin-1 beta or metallomatrix protease 3. There's, so it's not just traumatic and age, but there's a genetic piece to that too. So particularly if you have this kind of genetic piece, then you would probably have to say, okay, I'm going to do metformin. Is it twice a year, injected in the joint? But in the mouse studies, it not only stopped the progression, and they didn't continuously do it, but they actually started rebuilding cartilage. Now, again, I suspect you'd kind of go back eventually to the senescent cells would start reforming, and you have to hit them again, just like in our bodies, right? So I think it's going to be something you have to do periodically.
A perfect example of something I've been saying for over a decade now, that if you truly remove the insult, the body will start to fix itself.
Right.
So what you just said is that if you remove that insult, the cartilage starts to regrow. And remember, all the studies on osteoarthritis on PubMed say there is no way to correct it. That once you have osteoarthritis in your knees, that's it. It's just going to get worse over time. You may be able to slow it down, but it's just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah, that's what your doctor will tell you. Listen, we can put some steroids in there and blah, blah, blah. You're going to need a knee replacement, right? And you've got to fight that paradigm because that's not true. You can stop the progression and your body can heal, but you've got to eliminate all the things that are causing the problem. So it is these getting rid of the senescent cells. It's, blocking these. One of the drugs we use a lot is pentosine polysulfate. It's actually coming to the US soon as a drug called xylosol, and it blocks interleukin-1 beta, so it blocks one of these really bad inflammatory cytokines that we see. It blocks metallomatrix protease, which is a enzyme that sort of degrades the cartilage. So we use that a ton, and that in and of itself, in lots of patients, myself included, pain stops, arthritis stops progressing. I mean, I have end-stage arthritis in my knees, but they don't hurt at all. Now, if you looked at them, would they still potentially need some cartilage in them? Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I don't have pain.
Well, and that's where growth hormone comes into this discussion for a second. So as you pointed out off the air, using growth hormone without eliminating the insult may not be a good thing because you're also going to cause your zombie cells to grow faster.
Right. So, so using things, like what we've done is like IGF, and we've mixed like insulin-like growth factor in sometimes with platelet cells or stem cells or things like that to try and increase that growth response, right? Get more blood vessel formation, all the things that you want to have happen to heal the joint. Well, we're probably helping the zombie cells along the way as well. So again, that's a place where you've got to address the senescence piece, before you do the growth piece, before you've got to address the bad stuff before you try and regrow.
But assuming you've addressed the bad stuff, nothing makes cartilage and soft tissue grow better than growth hormone. We see this in acromegalia. We see this in bodybuilders with joint crowding from using 15 IUs a day. So once you've arrested the problem, if you're using rapamycin with regularity now, and your knees actually start feeling better because you have less of this inflammation going on because you're suppressing and ridding yourself of these senescent cells, is growth hormone or some similar growth factor an appropriate approach?
Yeah, so we use a lot of a peptide in that realm called AOD, which you're familiar with. So AOD mixed with hyaluronic acid. So hyaluronic acid, is sort of nourishes the joint. That's what helps make our joint fluid. So you use it. So AOD is a fragment of growth hormone that seems to really work well intra-articularly for helping cartilage regeneration. So it's a growth hormone fragment.
176 to 191, I believe it is.
Yeah, exactly. And
it was touted for fat loss, but it never worked. But we found a use for it. Right?
I mean, yeah, so it stands for anti-obesity drug because in mice, it was sort of a cure for, if you gave mice AOD, they didn't get fat. It works in only a small number of humans and probably only a very high dose, but that same fragment really stimulates joint health. And so what we'll do is once you get rid of all the senescence, and the question is, how do we do that, right? Can we do that with just systemic protocols, or do we need something that we can inject into the joint? My feeling is probably the future is going to be we inject something into the joint to actually stop the senescence. And then we do the regrowth using something like either stem cells, if you have healthy stem cells, but could you just then use AOD and HA, do a series of those and maybe do that once a year and you do really well, right?
Yeah.
I think that's probably a really reasonable protocol. And we do that a lot. We've been doing that a lot in our patients where, but I don't have an intra-articular injection yet. And again, I'm curious why that isn't available, because if you look at the studies of senolytics injected intra-articularly, at least in the animal models, metformin and rapamycin, all been studied as intra-articular injections. Why have they not come around? I'm puzzled a little bit by it, because
I am too. When that kind of logical thing happens, you become suspicious.
Yeah, you do. You're right. You're exactly right.
Why did they just stop? This is really great stuff. When are we
going
to be, ultrasound,
you see that in a lot of things.
And boom.
Yeah, there was study after study after study that showed it's supportive, and all of a sudden it disappears, and you're like, what happened with this?
What's that about? Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of actually looking at that, working with a pharmacy and saying, okay, let's just make this into a compound that we can inject intra-articularly. I'll try on myself first, because we're taking these drugs orally. They're not going to be any more damaging, into a joint. So, I think the safety profile is pretty established. We just have to get the right compound together to make. So I think the key is going to be, Carl, that we, I do think finding something to inject into the stem cell population, particularly if you want to get more aggressive, but I think you may go a long way with doing it sometime intra-articular senolytic agent and then using something like a growth hormone fragment like AOD, NHA, and then keep doing systemically as much as you can. And probably, depending on your genetics, maybe having to repeat that, I don't know, once, twice a year, but never needing a joint replacement. I mean, this study came out in 2017 that said, we should not be needing joint replacements anymore. We have so much stuff that we could probably prevent arthritis, but we're not doing it.
Isn't that sad? That's so sad, because entire knee replacement or hip replacement is not only invasive, but it's designed to fail at some point in time. If you're too old to get that next surgery, you have to live with it. I mean, there's just so many pitfalls in these types of surgeries that I really do think are unnecessary by and large. But
yeah, I mean, there's a point where, at this stage where, you're so, they can be life-changing surgeries. Like, you're so far down that road that, that you just need to do this. But only 50% of people ever get back to their same functional level after joint replacements. It's not, half of people don't ever go back to their same functional level they were prior to surgery. So it's not the answer. And the answer is, number one, understanding these are diseases, not like wearing out your tire.
Right.
And that we have to start treating these diseases earlier, not just waiting until they're horrible, right. And probably looking at our young people with injuries and addressing those to stop that process of starting even at that stage, right?
That's what happened to me. I lost my ACL in my left knee at 21 years old, coming down the bunny hill at the end of the day at the Playboy Club in Great Gorge. And my bindings didn't come off. My leg twisted like a rubber band and popped. And luckily I had a good doctor, Dr. Jim Parks. He was the physician for the Mets, and my uncle played for the Mets. And he said, look, you're not a pro athlete. I'm not going to open up your knee. This is before arthroscopy. He says, I'm not going to open up your knee and put a cadaver ligament in there. He says, just make your quad strong and it'll never bother you. And it was good advice he gave me. It really was. Saved my knee. I want to promote the program first. 1 second. If you want to become educated, go to www.bli.academy for the Human Optimization Academy. If you want to reach out and have a consultation with Dr. Yurth, give the Boulder Longevity website, please.
So it's just boulderlongevity.com.
Boulderlongevity.com.
And that will also hook you into the Human Optimization Academy. You can actually watch some sample courses. We do live Q&As every month with that group. So I like to tell people it's almost like our kind of little mini med school for you. We have a whole course coming up on Understanding Your Labs 101, where we teach you how to read your lab work, what is actually important in that lab work, numbers your doctor never talks to you about. You and I have talked about this in the past, like what's your albumin? That's really important. What's your mean cell volume? That's really important. So we talk about those things. Then we have another course that is all orthopedically aligned to help you understand arthritis and this understanding that we do, because we have to get people thinking along this line. And so we put together these courses, but the whole goal is I filter little guys through research every single night. I have this, you see my Google Scholar, every day feeds me every single article that's come out that day on all these different topics. And I feed through them. I try and find the ones that are really good articles, and I try and share them so we can push this stuff forward before it's outdated and old. I mean, the greatest fact is that if you look at like insulin was discovered almost 20 years before it actually made it to clinical practice. The number of people who died because of that. And the same thing's going on now. We sort of laugh and we're like, oh my God, the same thing's going on now. I have these people all the time who, come in with an arthritic knee or an injury, and, the doctors told them something, and I'm trying to switch the paradigm. I say, no, that's not the way to address this. It's not just keep putting steroids in it until you need a replacement, but it's a very hard paradigm to change because there's nobody in the orthopedic world who's saying it.
It's really funny. Well, I've talked about this stuff on the show. I actually experienced it a couple years ago. I had a fungal infection in my cornea. And luckily, I had some research that showed that the thymosin beta-4 was very effective in getting the cornea to heal without any scar tissue, any scarring. And I had back then TaylorMade would make it for me.
Yeah.
I brought it to my eye doctor, and I said, "No, I'm gonna get my eye fine." He goes, "No," he says, "You're always gonna have a cloud there," and he goes, he said, "We can do a corneal transplant for you." And I said, "Yeah, but then won't I have to use steroid drops for the rest of my life?" Yeah. I said, "But then I'm going to get a cataract." He goes, "Well, then we'll just take the cataract out." So it's like no big deal. You'll develop this other disease from us treating this disease. This is how doctors think today. It's craziness. It's craziness.
Yeah, it really is. And and now TB4 eye drops actually are, and they're not quite there yet. They're not quite available, but they are actually, in the clinical pipeline. So much it's like the drug we were talking about, pentasin polysulfate. We started using pentasin polysulfate, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, because it was being used in Australia, and we were like, wow, this looks great, and we were able to get somebody to compound it for us here. It's now set to come to market here in the U.S. as kind of the blockbuster drug to cure arthritis in about another 2 years. So it's taken, even from the time it was shown safe and effective and used in Australia, will be 7 years later before it actually is going to start being clinically used here. And when I talked about it 5 years ago, people were like, "Oh, yeah, what's that?" I'm like, in my orthopedic practice, you can't talk about that. So you guys, you have to be a little bit willing. Blagas Galani talks about this, right? He's like, you have to be a little bit willing to take some chances if you're going to make some changes, right? The stuff we're doing has been proven safe, and the question is it perfect? Are we all the way along knowing perfect doses of things and like that? Maybe not, but we know it's safe, and we know we're probably going to be somewhat effective. And so that's why when we talk about things like, about some of these things that can we inject intra-articularly, why not? It's finding it's getting it compounded so you can actually use it intra-articularly. But we know we now have ample evidence that cell senescence is the root of all diseases, including your arthritis. We have ways to treat cell senescence. Why are we not doing that? Why are we not even thinking about it? And now we're doing this. The stem cell world is exploded. God, every street corner I go on has a stem cell clinic. I hear commercials about it all the time.
I know.
And nobody is addressing these studies.
Chiropractors are doing stem cell therapy now.
Yeah. I found 15 studies since 2017 that pointed to these stem cells, having a high degree of senescence, and even in not really old people, but people who had osteoarthritis, right? So we know it may be at the root of the osteoarthritis in the first place, and that now we're putting them back in.
I'm of the generation where we experimented with a lot of drugs, so like me, trying something, it's like, yeah, like Elisa even says that to me. My God, you take such risk. It's not really risky. You don't understand. And those of us who grew up in the 60s and the 70s, we know, they told you, oh, if you do acid, you're going to have flashbacks. I'm still waiting for the flashbacks. It would be a free trip. It's a free trip. I'm willing to accept that. It never showed up. They lied to me. We want to take one last commercial break. And when we come back, I want to ask you, did you see my video of me injecting my own knee?
No.
Okay. You're going to love this. All right. So stay tuned. We'll be right. She's already laughing. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Stay with us. Are you 35 or older? Every year after puberty, your growth hormone decreases sometimes by 50% by the age of 35, and it only keeps going down from there. This affects everything from making it harder to recover from workouts, sleep, and a general loss of a sense of well-being. It also affects your ability to get and stay lean. BioPro Plus is the first of its kind, 100% non-synthetic alternative to prescription synthetic growth hormone treatments. All the benefits without any of the needles or side effects, and 100% safe. Previously only available through doctors listeners, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro, that's BIOPRO, and use code SHR30 for $30 off today. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order Restoracell and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Hopefully we answered Kelly Bowen's question about the website. It's www.bli.academy. She said, yes, that's it. And thank you for asking, Kelly. So I have a problem with my left knee because of two things. I lost the ACL, which makes it prone to some real looseness. I haven't trained legs in a couple years because after my second foot surgery and wearing a walking boot for a total of 6 months in 1 year, my left knee, left calf, left ankle is just jacked. But it's getting better now because I'm focusing on some real therapeutic things to make the calf come back and the leg straighten out. The leg wants the foot wants to roll because I was rolling it that way to protect it before the surgeries. It would hurt so bad. But anyway, long story short, my left knee hurts sometimes. So the other day, I put 1.5 IUs of growth hormone, 1 milligram of mechano growth factor, and 1 milligram of BPC 157 into an insulin syringe. And you know when you sit down and you bend your knee, the outside of the knee, you got that little puffy, it's probably about 1.5 inches around between the front of the knee to the side of the kneecap, to the outside of the kneecap. And I had a 5/8 inch syringe, and I just pushed it in there and I let it go. And Dr. Yurth, I kid you not, I literally got up off the stairs where I injected it and took like 5 steps and the pain went away. Now, where did I said this is not intra-articular because I'm not getting into the capsule, but I am getting into the localized fluids, maybe lymph fluid from swelling or whatever. What did I do and why did it work?
That is a little bit hard to say, right? Like, well, what that sort of instantaneous thing is? It simply what you were talking about, right? That you actually sort of hit some of the nerve endings, right? So you've got all these little cutaneous nerves that come out, and there's some interesting, studies on, arthritis that you can actually do things that block nerves. It's like things like capsaicin, right? Just counter irritants. Why does that make you feel better? It's not doing anything to the joint, but it's sort of desensitizing, or it's a counter irritant to the nerves. So the nerves sort of shut down. So my guess is what you're doing with that combination in a superficial level, and you'll see. I mean, I've done that with BPC with like biceps and things like that. Where you put it in like, wow, that feels better. Could be placebo effect, but I think it may have something to do with some of the little tiny nerve fibers. One of the things that creates pain with arthritis is upregulation of something called NGF, neural growth factor, and and there's certainly a piece to stabilizing that with BPC. How instantaneous does that occur? Don't know, but I wonder if that's a little more neurogenic effect.
Right.
That sort of those little nerves shut down for a little bit, right?
The fact that those peptides are localized means they will be delivered to that region of the knee fast, right?
Yeah, they will. Certainly the blood picks them up and gets them there, right? And that's why, people feel like if you inject BPC close to the site of injury, you get better results than if you just inject it systemically, that maybe it's picked up by that bloodstream and carried there a little bit quicker. I don't know there's a ton of evidence to support that, but anecdotally, people certainly describe what you're describing. And myself too. I mean, sometimes you're like, oh, that feels better.
Will any of that actually end up in the synovial capsule?
It's going into the bloodstream. Blood feeds the joints. We have blood flow to the joint. So will some of it get intra-articularly? Maybe a small amount. It's not going to be a huge volume, not nearly as much as if you intra-articularly inject BPC.
Yeah.
Which, you had Dr. Chenna, Edwin Lee on a while ago talking about BPC intra-articularly, and it does help BPC injected intra-articularly. So it's got a great anti-inflammatory and healing effect. So a lot of these peptides you can inject intra-articularly. I think there's some that are even better than BPC, but lots of times we'll combine these things together, right? Even when we are doing things like platelets or stem cell therapies, we'll combine them with BPC or IGF or things like you're describing to try and accentuate the effects. The
pain went away, and it stayed away for probably a good week or so. Yeah. And that's why I thought, and I even said in the video, I said, this is not intra-articular. I would call this regionalized or localized, and maybe some of it is actually getting in there, but it gave me immediate relief, and I had no pain in that knee for days. And I actually thought, well, maybe once a week I'll just start injecting it. Maybe it'll start healing whatever the problem is in there.
I think, Carl, that's neural. So one of the things that you can do with even with back pain that they've shown, or people have kind of, is just injecting lidocaine, like trigger point injections, right? But just using lidocaine and people get relief for a week. Well, lidocaine's not working for a week. So what did you do? You sort of shut off these neurogenic influences, these little pain fibers that are sending these pain messages temporarily. You sort of settled them down.
Fascinating. I've got to get myself an ultrasound machine.
Then you can do your own intra-articular.
Right? Yeah, I want to be able to start doing my own intra-articular injections.
It's scary, Carl. I think you should just stay away from it. For those guys who don't know the things Carl's done to himself, I mean, sometimes it is a little on that verging on scary experimental sides.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not. There's too many good doctors that know the way around. Listen, it's been really great to have you back on the show. Let's do this again real soon. For those of you who really want to work with a doctor who can find answers, and let me tell you something. Most doctors don't look for answers. You come up with a set of symptoms, and they have a catalog in their head of, for this symptom, I give you that. For that symptom, I give you that. They give you a prescription. You go on your way. Your problem isn't fixed. The way the medical orthodoxy approaches medicine is kind of like this. Your smoke alarm is going off. So you take the battery out, and then you sit back down and watch television. Right? Because it's not going off anymore. So the problem is
feel better.
But the house is still on fire. Dr. Yurth does the kind of work. And it is work because most doctors don't want to have to work this hard today. But Dr. Yurth does the kind of work where she tries to find why you, specifically you, not your sister, not your mother, because they both had this problem too, but why you're having this problem. And then once you identify the problem, then you can work on removing the insult. And as we've been talking about earlier in the show, once the insult is removed, the body miraculously knows how to go back to the original blueprints in your DNA and go, hey, let's start building this cartilage up.
Yeah, our body wants to be healthy. It does. It really wants to repair, right? You just have to change some of the genetics. You have to change what you're doing, and it does want to fix itself.
And you can work with Dr. Yurth distance, Zoom calls and stuff like that now, thanks to COVID. Everybody is comfortable with this. One of the gifts from the COVID epidemic. But work with a doctor who has your best interest at heart and not what the insurance company is expecting them to do. Reach out to boulderlongevity.com. And one more time, if you want to become your own advocate, sign up for the Human Optimization Academy at www.bli.academy. And
if nothing else, guys, do me the favor of watching the arthritis talk that's on that academy, because I will tell you, I listen to, I read every aging paper and all these diseases, and everybody keeps leaving arthritis out of it. And it's the fourth leading cause of disability. If you can't walk anymore, you're going to die. So we keep thinking about the heart and the brain and all these other pieces. Your joints are equally as important, and I keep seeing it left out of this aging paradigm. So at least watch that, talk to you, an understanding of why this needs to be thought of as a disease, because it's not what you're going to hear. And when your doctor tells you, oh, you're just buying your time till a joint replacement, don't listen, because there is a lot of reasons. If your joint is becoming arthritic, there's other things going on too. So you've got to start addressing that. And then you won't need the joint replacement, but hopefully also we've saved other pieces of your body as well.
There you go. Thanks for being here today, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks, Carl.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Good seeing you. Bye.
Okay. And that's it for today. We have lots of great shows next week. Don't forget, I always say share the show. This is really a show you should share because this show can help a lot of people. And it's just the knowledge that we're sharing. It's not like they have to buy anything special. So please pass this show around, and we'll see everybody with more Superhuman Radio on Monday. Have a great weekend. Stay strong.